The capital of Iran is facing a growing economic storm. In Tehran, the government has launched a broad campaign to wrestle the country's runaway inflation and deepen currency crisis under the leadership of President Masoud Pezeshkian. From the outset, officials in Tehran admit that the situation is acute. With inflation persistently above 35% and the Rial plummeting against the US dollar, everyday Iranians are feeling the consequences every day. At a press briefing, a senior official warned, "We must act now or the currency collapse will undermine all social contracts." He added that the drop in the Rial's value is not just a financial statistic, it is a threat to livelihoods, incomes and public confidence. In response, the government has taken a bold step. The national currency will be redenominated. Under the bill passed in Parliament, 4 zeros will be cut from the Rial, effectively meaning 10,000 old Rials will become one new Rial. As one Finance Ministry document explains, this change will simplify everyday transactions, restore trust and reduce the burden of trillions of Rials being moved for simple purchases. Why now? The context is stark. The Rial has lost approximately 37% of its value against the dollar in 2024 alone, driving capital flight, encouraging dollarization and pushing parts of the economy underground. Banks and businesses say they are drowning in figures too large to easily compute and record. In one Tehran marketplace, a vendor told us a loaf of bread costs 10 million Rials. No one wants to carry large bundles of bills anymore. Analysts say the reform is long overdue. The idea of zero cutting has been discussed since 2008, but only in late 2025 was it approved. The timing corresponds with a broader push by the central bank to ease accounting burdens and improve monetary transparency. Yet critics caution that cutting zeros addresses a symptom, not the disease. One economist observed removing zeros is cosmetic unless inflation is controlled, sanctions eased, and confidence rebuilt. Inside Iran's government, the message is more optimistic. President Pezeshkian said in a televised address, "We will not hide from the challenges. We will give our people a currency that works, not one that fails us every day." He acknowledged the scale of the task. Decades of policy that neglected the currency, paired with external sanctions and domestic rigidity, had brought the country to this point. He pledged a comprehensive plan combining redenomination with banking reform, anti-money laundering measures and tighter oversight of foreign exchange flows. One senior central bank official explained the timetable. The new currency will be prepared over 2 years. Then for the next 3 years, both the old and new Rials will operate in parallel before the old notes are phased out. Long term, the hope is to return to a more stable monetary environment. But ordinary Iranians aren't waiting for 5-year transitions. In supermarkets, the price tags are already creeping upward. When asked whether the redenomination will relieve pressure on households, a shopper in northern Tehran observed, "A new Rial doesn't change what I earn. It just makes my numbers smaller, but the real burden is unchanged." Women, men, retirees and small business owners all report an erosion of purchasing power. Social welfare payments indexed to the old Rial struggle to keep pace. Savings in banks, already yielding negative real returns, are being eroded further by inflation. One retiree said, "My pension was in billions of Rials last year. This year I need more just to buy the same groceries." The government is aware of the political stakes. Currency crises rarely stay confined to economics. They often spill into social unrest and public disaffection. Officials repeatedly highlight that restoring the confidentiality of the Rial is also about restoring public trust in the broader system. A senior advisor put the challenge bluntly: if people stop trusting the currency, they stop trusting their jobs, their pensions, their future. Part of the problem lies in sanctions and external pressures. With limited access to global financial systems, Iran's export revenue has been constrained, while import costs have soared. The result? Greater reliance on informal markets, extensive use of foreign currencies inside Iran's economy, and a multiplication of exchange rates. One industry observer noted that even if the redenomination is implemented flawlessly without structural reform, Iran could face repeated currency crises in the future. Every time the currency collapses again, you'll ask, why did we slice the zeros when the problem was rising inflation and weak institutions, he asked. To bolster the reform, the government is preparing a public information campaign. Officials will explain how to read new banknotes, how pricing will convert, and how businesses must adjust their accounting systems. They emphasize that the reforms will not by themselves reverse inflation, but they hope it can ease the mechanical burden of current currency chaos. Meanwhile, overseas investors remain cautious. Despite talk of reform, capital flight remains, and Iran's exposure to global financial networks remains limited. A senior investment bank's research note warned, if inflation remains high, the redenomination could backfire. People may treat new Rials as simply the same old Rial in new clothes. Inside the government, voices acknowledge this risk. One senior official said, our reform will succeed only if inflation drops, exports increase and trust returns. Cutting zeros is a tool, not the solution. In downtown Tehran, one noticeable change is that some price tags now show simplified figures. For example, where previously tens of millions of Rials appeared, the new labels show thousands. The hope is that by reducing zero count, the day-to-day financial interactions become less cumbersome and psychologically more manageable. But for many Iranians, the main question remains, will this change improve their standard of living? Will their wages keep pace with rising costs? Will their savings hold value? The government has promised a wage review and subsidies relief as part of the reform package, but details remain thin. In a televised interview, a Labour union representative cautioned, the currency may change form, but unless our wages change too, nothing really changes for workers. On the broader diplomatic front, the reform comes at a time when Iran is seeking to ease sanctions and re-engage with international markets. President Pezeshkian has signalled a willingness to revive the nuclear deal framework, and economic reforms at home may help strengthen Iran's case externally. The foreign minister echoed the message, a stable currency is not only for domestic strength, it underpins our ability to engage internationally. Critics, however, warn that domestic political constraints remain. The structure of Iran's economy, with large state-owned enterprises, a dominant role for the Revolutionary Guard and limited private sector reform, means that monetary improvements may bump into structural barriers. A policy analyst observed, currency reform is only as strong as the institutions behind it. If governance and transparency don't improve, the next crisis will come. As Tehran moves ahead with the redenomination, the atmosphere is cautious. On the one hand, the public seems to welcome at least a sanity check on the currency's outrageous figures. On the other, many remain sceptical. Will this be a fresh start or another cosmetic tweak? In one coffee shop downtown, a young professional put it simply, if they remove the zeros, I'll still have the same bank balance, the same salary, just fewer digits. Real change happens when I can afford a flat and feed my family without fear. The government plans to issue new banknotes, adjust ATM and payment system software, revise accounting and tax systems, and launch public education, all major undertakings. Over the coming 2 years, while the new currency is being prepared, the old and new Rial will circulate, then a further 3 years for full transition. As one economist summed up, they have bought time, now they must use it. For Iran, time is precious. The currency is not simply a medium of exchange, it has become a barometer of deeper economic and political fault lines. If the reform fails to match expectations, public frustration could deepen. If it succeeds, it could provide a stepping stone toward broader recovery. President Pezeshkian has framed it starkly. We cannot afford to maintain the status quo. Our economy cannot carry the burden of instability any longer. At its heart, this reform is more than currency surgery. It is an attempt to reset expectations, rebuild trust, and provide a functioning monetary system under which everyday Iranians can operate without the constant fear of devaluation. Whether it succeeds will depend not only on the number of zeros removed, but on whether inflation is brought under control, institutions are strengthened, and the economy begins to deliver for ordinary people. In the coming months and years, Iranians will judge the reform not by the size of their banknotes, but by the stability of their incomes, the value of their savings, and the predictability of their economic lives. For now, the slicing of zeros may offer a symbolic relief, but the real work lies ahead. As one senior government strategist put it, currency reform may lighten the load on the ledger, but the real ledger is the national ledger of trust, growth, and stability.